and held him beside my boat, half out of the water with my hook, fast in the corner of his mouth. He didn't fight. He hadn't fought at all. He hung a grunting weight, battered and vulnerable and homely. Here and there, his brown skin hung in strips like ancient wallpaper. And its pattern of darker brown was like a wallpaper. Shapes like full-blown roses. Stained and lost through age, he was speckled with barnacles. Fine rosettes of lime, and infested with tiny white sea lice. And underneath 2 or 3 rags of green weed hung down, while his gills were breathing in the terrible oxygen. The frightening gills, fresh and crisp with blood that can cut so badly. I thought of the coarse white flesh, packed in like feathers. Big bones and little bones, like dramatic reds and blacks. Of his Chinese entrails and the pink swim bladder, like a big peony. I looked into his eyes. They were far larger than mine, but shallower and yellowed. Irises backed and packed, with tarnished tinfoil seen through the lenses of the old shattered iron glass. They shifted a little, not to return to my stare. It was more like a tipping of the object to the light. I admired his sullen face, the mechanism of his jaws. And then I saw from that lower lip the grim, wet and weapon-like, hung 5 old pieces of fish line, or 4 and a wire leader with the swivel still attached with all 5 big hooks, ground firmly in his mouth. A green line frayed at the end, and where he broke it, 2 heavier lines, and a fine black thread, still crimpled from the strain and snap. When it broke and he got away, frayed and wavering, 5-haired beard of wisdom trailing from his aching jaw. I stared and stared, and victory filled up the little rented boat from the pool of bilage, where oil had spread a rainbow around the rutted engine to the bailer rusted orange. The sun corked thwarts, the oarlocks on their strings, the gunnels, until everything was rainbow. Rainbow! Rainbow! And I let the fish go.
For humans, like, we need it to survive, but for fish, it can kill them, so the terrible oxygen. And the way that, like, some of these words, it kind of seems like she's describing the fish as, like, rusty, like, with words like coarse and stained and battered and fresh and crisp. So we'll later see that the fish kind of is also compared to the boat, because the boat she's on is pretty rusty. I looked into his eyes, which were far larger than mine, but shallower and yellowed, the irises backed and packed with tarnished tinfoil, seen through the lenses of old scratched isinglass. They shifted a little, but not to return my stare. So she's looking into his eyes, and it's almost like she's having like a personal connection with him, and almost like, or her, and almost like looking for kind of like a human soul, or like just really descriptive of the fish. So you can tell she's really like observing him and kind of treating like how you observe humans really distinctively, but you don't normally observe fish distinctively. She's kind of treating the fish as if it's a human. While his gills were breathing in the terrible oxygen, the frightening gills, fresh and crisp with blood that can cut so badly, I thought of the coarse white flesh packed in like feathers, the big bones and the little bones, the dramatic reds and blacks of his shiny entrails, and the pink swim bladder like a peony. So again, the author just keeps describing the fish even further. And when it says the terrible oxygen, is kind of an oxymoron a little bit, because oxygen of darker brown was like wallpaper, shapes like full-blown roses stained and lost through age. So the fish is kind of seeming like, it seems like he's helpless, pretty much, probably from like humans overfishing and everything. And the writer kind of compares like the fish to household objects, like the wallpaper and everything. So it kind of like puts the fish almost at the same level as humans. And by the descriptions of saying it was like ancient and lost through age, it's kind of saying the fish is like old and experienced, and he's like been through a lot. He was speckled with barnacles, fine rosettes of lime, and infested with tiny white sea lice, and underneath 2 or 3 rags of green weed hung down. So, our poem is The Fish by Elizabeth Bishop, and it's about her fishing one day, and she catches a certain fish that makes her kind of relate to it and start to relate like human existence and human beings with animals. So, I caught a tremendous fish and held him beside the boat, half out of water with my hook fast in a corner of his mouth. He didn't fight. He hadn't fought at all. So obviously we know that the fish is like kind of symbolizing something, and it shows that she has control over him, because it says my hook fast in a corner of his mouth, but he's not fighting back when it says he didn't fight. He hadn't fought at all. He had a grunting weight, battered and venerable and homely. Here and there his brown skin hung in strips really like negative in the whole beginning of the poem, but the shift goes from like her days when she's thinking about the fish and observing the fish, like she's kind of in a daydream and lost in her thoughts, and this shift she kind of like snaps back to reality, because she's like overcome with this beautiful sight that she sees, which you'll see. I stared and stared, and victory filled up the little rented boat. From the pool of bilge where oil had spread a rainbow, around the rusted engine to the bailer, rusted orange, the sun-cracked thwarts, the oarlocks on their strings, the gunnels, until everything was rainbow, 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 and I let the fish go. So there you can see rainbow, rainbow, rainbow. She's like describing like where the oil spills and like how the sun reflects, and it's like a beautiful rainbow. Like she sees this beautiful sight and she snapped back into reality, like out of her thoughts about the fish, and she decides to let the fish go, because she realizes that the fish is a living, existing thing, and that it shouldn't be, treated any differently than other living things just because it's a fish. Just something human inside the fish. It was more like the tipping of an object toward the light. I admired his sullen face, the mechanism of his jaw, and then I saw that from his lower lip, if you could call it a lip, grim, wet, and weapon-like, hung 5 old pieces of fish line, or 4 in a wire leader with the swivel still attached, with all their 5 big hooks grown firmly in his mouth. So you can see here she kind of has respect for him. Like, I admired his sullen face, and like she can tell by like the fish hooks and everything and the wire that he's been through a lot, so she's admiring and respecting that. Almost like he's an elder. Like, because typically in a lot of cultures, like, humans respect their elders, so she's almost respecting him as if he's like a human elder. A green line frayed at the end where he broke it, 2 heavier lines, and a fine black thread still crimped from the strain and snap when it broke and he got away. Like metals with their ribbons frayed and wavering, a 5-haired beard of wisdom trailing from his aching jaw. So right here, a shift happens in the poem. Like, it's not like she's necessarily describing him negatively, or